I'm here with my buddy Chris, and we are headed somewhere. Actually going down a trail that I've not been on. What's that?
We're heading on to No Telling Knob.
That's right, No Telling Knob, if you've been there. See that bear spray? That's why he's in front of me.
That's real bear spray you don't carry your backpack.
Spring is a time when everything is growing and wildlife is emerging from the long winter. It's never a dull day chasing the wildlife, capturing images, and just enjoying the great outdoors. Stumbling across a few great opportunities this year, I thought I'd just stop and share with you 5 simple and useful tips when it comes to capturing wildlife images. I hope they add value to your time as you capture special moments connecting with wildlife. Let's jump in.
Tip number 1, shutter speed, shutter speed, shutter speed. It's critical when shooting wildlife to have the right shutter speed. Wildlife is always on the go. To maintain critical sharpness in your photographs, you want to maintain the appropriate shutter speed. How do you figure out what the appropriate shutter speed is? It all comes down to focal length. Today I'm shooting with a 100-400 with a 1.4 extender, which means I'm shooting about 600 millimeters. Figuring out the right shutter speed is really easy. Take the focal length, for example 600 millimeters, and make sure that your shutter speed matches that, or faster. For example, 600 means 1/600th of a second is the minimum shutter speed that I should be shooting, or faster. Sometimes it's appropriate to even go twice the shutter speed if your ISO and your aperture allow it. Don't be so concerned about ISO because sharpness and shutter speed should be your priority. So tip number 2, shoot with auto ISO. When wildlife is on the go, the last thing that you want to be figuring out and adjusting is your camera settings. Shooting with auto ISO allows you to be focused on the wildlife, and rather than adjusting your camera settings constantly. It's happened to me. Shooting at a specific ISO and focusing on the wildlife, I've missed opportunities to get the right exposure. So tip number 1 again is shutter speed, shutter speed, shutter speed. Match your shutter speed to the focal length that you're shooting at. Tip number 2, auto ISO. Tip number 3 is single point focus. Single point focus allows you to maintain the focus point directly on the wildlife that you're shooting. Oftentimes, again, because wildlife is on the go, if you don't shoot with single point focus, you might miss the focus point on the wildlife. Now, some cameras have focusing that will track. That also is an option. But maintaining a single point allows you to make sure that your subject is always in focus. So tip number 4, use a tripod. Well, you might be thinking, if you're getting a fast enough shutter speed, why do you need to shoot on a tripod? Well, it's really about energy savings. You know, when you're shooting wildlife, sometimes you're out in the field for a long duration. Without a tripod, you can get fatigued. And also, shooting on a tripod allows you to pan quickly and adjust to the wildlife activity. If you take the effort to take along the tripod, I guarantee you'll have more energy throughout your day. So that comes down to tip number 5. When shooting on a tripod, make sure to turn any image stabilization off on the lens. Image stabilization mechanisms really are internal motors on the lens that are really made for when you're not on a tripod. If you have image stabilization turned on when on a tripod, that motor acts against the tripod, which can lead to vibration, which then can lead to lack of sharpness or blurry images. Now, oftentimes you don't notice this significantly when you're looking at the back screen of your camera. But I guarantee you, when you go home, you'll definitely see the difference between when you turn it on or off. So tip number 5, always turn stabilization off when on a tripod, but back on if you're hand holding a shot. So again, just to review, tip number 1, shutter speed, shutter speed, shutter speed. Match your shutter speed to the focal length that you're shooting on, or faster. That's the minimum. Tip number 2, auto ISO. Light and conditions are always evolving and changing. Using auto ISO allows your focus to be on the subject and not on your camera settings. Tip number 3, single point focus. Using single point focus allows your subject, which is the wildlife, to always maintain its focus in the scene. Tip number 4, use a tripod when shooting wildlife. It's always going to save you energy. Take the time and effort to take the tripod with you. And tip number 5, when shooting on a tripod, make sure that you turn any image stabilization mechanism on the lens off. By doing so, you're going to maintain critical sharpness in your photos and be super happy with the end result. So if you go to the website captureicons.com, there you'll see a list of next workshops. Also, on that page are social media links. Capture Icons Photo Group is a place where you could share your wildlife photos. You'll see a link for that in the description below. So if you like this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. Put any comments below and I'll do my best to respond to them. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe. Hit the little bell, that's a notification allowing you to be updated next time I upload the next video. And thanks for coming along with me on this adventure.